May of 2019 has seen a plethora of decks topping all over, from your local level event all the way to nationals. We have seen some really interesting decks take some of the top cut spots. One would have to wonder, hey TheCaliEffect, I think I have a good grasp on tier 1, but what are those other decks, some decks that could sneak into the format and possibly take over any type of level event? Well, look no further. In this video, I have quite a few decks that I want to tell you guys that can compete with the meta, as well as why. I'm TheCaliEffect, and if you guys want to see more videos like this, then go and destroy. I had to just destroy that subscribe button. But more importantly, go ahead and hit that notification bell because, well, we just too strong. Also want to give a special thanks to every single one of my Patreons. Without you guys, videos like this would not be possible. And a bad shout out to our newest Patreon, Michael Devney. Welcome to the clan. You're already a part of that Discord, so it'd be even more awesome to have people like you guys in there as well. It's such an awesome community, and I know you'll grow to love it. Without further ado, I present to you the top tier list for the May 2019 format. Okay guys, so normally in my meta breakdown videos, we'd always just put a card or whatever it is onto the side. This time we're gonna be doing it a lot different. We're gonna turn to the tier list maker because that just seems to be the fad. I actually been wanting to use this tier list maker for quite a few things, possibly even talk about the best decks of all time and other things alike. I wanna know what you guys think about those ideas, and then make sure to love this video up, give it as many likes as possible, and we'll look into doing even more videos with this. Starting off, we're actually going to be able to describe every single one of the tiers and what I think, not just giving you a bland, this is tier 1 because it's tier 1. We actually have reasons why we put these decks in certain categories. Tier 1, the best decks of the format don't necessarily have too many counters and are normally one of the strategies that top multiple events. Now, I'm not gonna use events to put a deck into a tier, but sometimes you can back it up with events. The next thing is tier 1.5. 1.5 is just as good as tier 1, for the exception is that it's not as invulnerable as tier 1. There are sometimes some obvious weaknesses to the deck that can be exploited, unlike the tier 1 decks, a little harder to exploit. Tier 2 are the decks that are just really good into the format, maybe because tier 1 has taken some decks out of the format, or tier 1.5, and are viable at your local, regional, and sometimes your YCS level event. The rogue decks are really good, but they're only really good because they're extremely powerful against a tier 1 deck or maybe a tier 1.5 deck, or one of these decks have given them something to make them more powerful. And then the sleeper decks of the meta, you guys already know that's everybody's favorite part. Some decks that I'm going to talk about that could or should be doing a lot better than what they are. So starting off with the first archetype, Invoked has to go into tier 2. While Invoked Macabre has definitely lost its luster, Invoked is still a really good strategy, being able to have a 1 card or almost a 1 card fusion, definitely 1 card if your opponent provides the materials in their graveyard. You can make monsters like Macabre to negate your opponent's cards, Trio to attack multiple cards, possibly even attack for game, and Invoked Rage and Whistles a disruption. Don't forget about those other Invoked monsters that could become useful later down on in the future, but right now I think it's the Trio / your Raging Show. Those seem to be taking the forefront. Nonetheless, this deck is still pretty solid and can mesh well with other archetypes to make itself even better. Altergeist is going to be your alter guide into tier 2 type anti-meta decks. And I'm going to explain a little bit later on how I feel about tier 2 decks, even use them as an analogy for my favorite treat, or one of my favorite treats. But ultimately, Altergeist are seen as a deck that is completely dead. You couldn't be further from the truth right now. Altergeist still have strategies and still being able to get that boost from their Pot of Extravagance, as well as having access to Secret Village of the Spellcasters, one of the very few decks that has access to such a powerful card. You can disrupt the opponent, just in a different way, since it's no longer the center stage of anti-meta decks. Black Wings are going into the rogue category, and I know what you guys are looking at me like, Black Wings? Rogue? Well, Orcust has given a myriad of dark decks huge potential, and the reason why Black Wings are rogue is because a lot of the tier 1 decks can't deal with monsters that can summon themselves to the side of the field and be immune to card effects. Black Wings do that pretty well, being able to summon a huge monster that's unaffected by card effects, and they can do it with ease. Sometimes making one isn't just enough, so if your deck is a one-trick pony or has a hard time making that card, normally it has to be a very searchable card or an extra deck card, then it will struggle. Black Wings don't do that. The fact that they are dark monsters and can miss well with the Orca strategy only makes them a little bit more powerful. Blue Eyes are easily tier 1 in Kaiba's eyes, but in this video, we're gonna go ahead and put them down to the Rogue strategy. Having access to Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon is almost the exact same thing as having access to your Blackwing Synchro monster. The ability to make it unaffected and it inflicts double damage, well, I mean, you can make some OTK situations. For the players that don't want to play just Blue Eyes Chaos Max, well, Blue Eyes Synchro Dragon is still really good being able to negate those Graveyard Monsters effects. People seem to forget that the Synchro monster negates graveyard effects. And he can special summon the other Blue Eye Synchro monster, notice that I'm not calling them by their names because I can't recall them, to make it unaffected and unaffected by card effects and recur a dragon monster to your side of the field. Blue Eyes is a decent rogue strategy that can have some really good matchups against some of the tier 1 decks, some of the tier 2 and tier 1.5. Burning Abyss is a tier 2 strategy. Tier 2 is definitely one of those that's gonna have a lot in its bracket, and Burning Abyss is no different. Having access to either a Chaos Burning Abyss, a PK Fire, or an Earth Burning Abyss gives you a myriad of choices of how you want to destroy your opponent with the Travelers of the Seven Sins. The bad thing about Burning Abyss is that there are several cards on the Forbidden list, namely Seer, Graph, Beatrice, and Fairy Tale Snow that inhibit the deck strategy, making it vulnerable to certain hand traps that can completely ruin your day. Nonetheless, Burning Abyss seems to get stronger with every single set that comes out, and I wouldn't sleep on it. It can easily hop up in this list or be higher on the tier 2 bracket with a couple of cards off the Forbidden list or some help from newer sets. Crusadia is the best deck of all time. We just gotta make another tier, and we gotta put it to S tier for super tier. Not necessarily, we're not gonna make the other, it's gonna go to tier 2. I'm sorry. So the reason why this deck is so powerful is just because it has 2-card OTKs in scenarios where you can put your opponent in really tough spots. The thing about Crusadia is that it plays the best with Black Garden out of any other of these decks, and you guys know what Black Garden does to Mystic Mind, turning your opponent's cards into their own worst nightmare. Speaking of turning other cards into their own worst nightmare, Cyber Dragon can do that pretty well too. A solid tier 2 strategy that can mix well with Orcust, possibly even play a Chaos Cyber Dragon build. You can summon cards like Cyber Dragon to your side of the field, you run like 9 copies of the card, and turn any of your opponent's monsters in the extra monster zone into a mega fleet. Following up from there, you can make Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, destroy cards on your opponent's side of the field, and have OTK potential. Next is Danger. Watch yourself. Danger. Show me what you work. No, seriously, this is actually a representation of Danger, Thunder Dragon, Chaos Dragon, Guard Dragon. Look, you would think that it would just be a Danger Dragon deck, but unfortunately, most of the deck isn't even Dragon. It just abuses your Danger cards to get you advantage, your Thunder Dragon cards because of the free Light and Darkness fodder, as well as the free Thunder Dragon Colossus, as well as the fact that I don't know, it just has access to summon guard dragons and link off like crazy. Nonetheless, this deck is the premier choice when it comes to making break my board type of scenarios. It resides in the tier 1.5 statuses because it's just a little bit easier to counter. Dark Magician has to go right next to Blue Eyes in terms of attack and defense. See what I did there? Because Dark Magician's text, it says, anyways, Dark Magician is a really solid rogue strategy, and some of you guys may be scratching your heads. Callie, Dark Magician isn't rogue, you just like Dark Magician. True. But also at the same time, Dark Magician has access to Dark Magical Circle, which is a disruption on your opponent's turn. Magician's Navigation can banish itself from the graveyard as well as put some Dark Magician cards to your side of the field. You also have Eternal Soul, which gives you a semi-filling of your Blue Eyes and your Black Wings, making your Dark Magicians invincible. Nonetheless, rank 7s are on the come up, and Dark Magician is definitely going to take advantage of that. Did I forget to mention that the deck is dark? Dark decks just seem to be on the up in this format. Next is Crusadia again. I'm just going to go ahead and put it right by the Crusadia because we've already talked about it. I just accidentally have you know, two Crusadia thumbnails. True Draco is easily 1.5, and the reason why True Draco is 1.5 is the reason why we'll always be competitive. For as long as you have your True Draco spell cards inside of Draco Phoenix and Heritage, as well as you still have your trap cards like Apocalypse and Return, the deck will always be good. Anytime a card has multiple effects on it and all of them ring true, on top of that having a graveyard effect, the deck is normally good. You have at least 10 copies of these cards in any True Draco deck, and not to mention that the monsters say, hey, when my opponent plays Yu-Gi-Oh, I play Yu-Gi-Oh. When my opponent's not playing Yu-Gi-Oh, well, I just so happen to be winning. Being able to tribute some of those big bodies to your side of the field and control the tempo of the game, True Draco will always be one of those decks. If not in the tier 2 status, 1.5 at least. Dino Mist. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, CaliEffect, are you crazy? They're not a sleeper. You're right, they're not a sleeper. Dino Mist are actually rogue. Whoa. And now a lot of you people are probably scratching your head. The people that love Dino Mist, hi all 5 of you guys, probably love my selection. And the reason why Dino Mist are really good is just sheerly out of the access of Cyber Dragon Infinity and totally awesome inside of a Pendulum based deck. Look, if your deck is not completely just offline with the Pendulum mechanic, just so happens to be Pendulum cards, more often than not, the deck list is going to be really good. Dino Mist fall under that. They have really good Pendulum summoning accessibility, as well as some pretty good trap cards, access to totally awesome, and in Cyber Dragon Infinity, the deck's pretty good. The effects are really powerful. It's a solid rogue deck that can compete and take out some of these decks in the higher brackets. Next is Doom King Ballardrock / Zombie Control, and you guys should already know, a lot of archetypes are completely xenophobic. They don't want to mess with any other types other than their own. Cyberse monsters like to be Cyberse. Dragon monsters like to be Dragon. Well, Zombie World likes to make you zombie. And as long as super polymerization exists in multiples, this deck will even get more and more powerful, being able to fuse any of your opponent's monsters at any given time into a strong monster on your side of the field that provides fodder for you, as well as still having that aspect of Rivalry of the Warlords, plus Zombie World preventing your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And I haven't even talked about how Doom King Ballardrock not only negates zombie monsters on the field, so all of your opponent's monsters, it can even banish monsters on your opponent's side of the field when zombie monsters, your opponent's monsters, activate themselves. Nexus Shadow as a solid rogue option. Now, a lot of people are probably saying Shadows are not good without Shadow Construct and multiples. I think that the deck would be a lot better with Shadow Construct and multiples, but you still sleep that Shadow is one of the best decks when it comes to manipulating how your opponent wants to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Shadow Fusion punishes your opponent for playing in the extra deck, and looking at every single one of these decks, barring True Draco, you go into the extra deck. A lot of them, a lot more than normal. Shadow Winda punishes players that want to special summon more than once. Construct punishes players that want to battle you that are special summoned from the extra deck. Grista punishes special summon monsters. Shekinaga punishes special summon monsters. And what's even better, Super Polymerization is at 2. The last time that Super Polymerization and Shadows went hand in hand, the deck was tier 1. I think it's a solid rogue option because it's a dark deck, being able to gain advantage through your Squamata, Dragon, Beast, or Hedgehog, and still being able to play a Chaos version, sending cards like Equipped Wyvern to your graveyard, later banishing it to not only add Dark Magician, but not only add Dark Armed Dragon, but Chaos Dragon Levianeer from your hand. This deck is a lot more sneaky good than you think. Elemental Heroes as another solid rogue option. Look, Master Hero Darklaw is here to stay apparently. People have been wanting this card's banned since its inception. Not gonna happen. It's not good enough to be banned, but it is good enough to ruin the opponent's day. The format right now is really reliant on the graveyard, and even looking at almost every single one of these strategies, they need their graveyard to thrive. Actually, I think every single one of these strategies have something to do with the graveyard. It looks like Darklaw has a lot of work out for it. On top of that, every single one of these strategies that are mentioned right here searches a card from their deck to their hand, and Darklaw takes care of that. I'm not saying Elemental Heroes will be better than what they are now. They definitely deserve the status that they're in the rogue, taking some decks by surprise. But they are still really a good deck that people should be mindful of when you want to play a fun deck and if you do love Elemental Heroes. Fur hires are for lease inside of a new section that I have to make. And it's going to be called, ladies and gentlemen, the tier above all tiers. It's going to be called, like, oh, oops, whoopsies. Let me just say that is Sleeper. And this is going to be called, ladies and gentlemen, Cali, what are you doing? And the reason why we made this tier is because I wanted to throw some of you guys off. I wanted to put some strategies in here that you guys are going to think that was going to be, oh, how is this going to be a sleeper? TheCaliEffect, you're insane. No, seriously, fur hires are not bad, but it's definitely a Cali. What are you doing? This deck has no place in any of these categories right now. It was just in there to look nice. But what I will tell you about fur hires is that they do have access to giving your opponent an Ibly and then drawing multiple cards. That's pretty nice. It's a pretty fun deck to play. I think it's a great local level type deck. Constellar? Rogue? Huh. What? TheCaliEffect, you're definitely out of your mind. Now, Constellar plays different than Altergeist. I don't want you guys to get these two confused. What Constellar does is that it special summons Constellar Until, get your Deneb searches Altair, make some really good Exceed monsters, spaz out, and then win the game. The difference between Constellar, Altair, and your Altergeist is that we're in a dark heavy format, and Constellar actually has a built-in Exceed monster to counter it. It's called Satellar, Constellar, Diamond, or whatever. Card's really good against dark-based decks. Constellar still has that same ability to gain advantage, now this time with Pot of Extravagance or Pot of Desires, whatever you so choose, and it has one of the best trap cards in the game, a Walking Infernity Barrier. Don't sleep on Constellars, it's a lot better than what people think. One thing I want to say about every single one of these anti-meta decks is that they're going to be creeping inside of your tier 2 Rogue, Sleeper, and sometimes even your tier 1.5 status. The reason being is because every single one of these anti-meta decks are good in their own right. I like to say they're like ice cream. Sometimes you go to the ice cream parlor and you order something not butter pecan. Seriously, you filthy pleb, why aren't you ordering butter pecan? Butter pecan's the best ice cream. But sometimes you want strawberry, like Constellar or like Satellars, which can help dominate the opponent by focusing on dark decks. Sometimes you want to destroy your opponent's spell cards through your Altergeist. A lot of times you want to play True Draco, which would be butter pecan right now. It's the best anti-meta deck, and butter pecan's the best ice cream. But literally, the reason why I like this format so much is because no matter what the meta is, no matter what the tier 1, tier 1.5, or tier 2, you can pick an anti-meta deck and have a pretty decent time against some of the best decks. And since they're so cheap, you can pretty much play a myriad of anti-meta decks and then just play one every different day of the week. Like, they're not that hard. Galaxy Eyes, moving on to the next one, is going to be in that Cali. What are you doing? Look, I have a lot of respect for Galaxy Eyes players. I do think that it's a very fun deck to play. The only problem with Galaxy Eyes is that this deck in the tier 1.5 status, this Danger, Thunder, Chaos deck, makes those unbreakable boards that Galaxy wants to make, except better. It does it with 1 to 2 cards. Galaxy has to strive to use its whole hand to make almost half the board what this deck can make, and this deck can actually go second. Galaxy against an established board will struggle, unfortunately. I do think it's a very fun deck to play though. Gem Knight in that solid tier 2 status. What? It's just that people don't play it enough. This is the most consistent FTK. Why? Because Konami refuses to address this card. But as soon as Lapis Lazuli gets banned and Gem Knight Master Diamond comes to 3, now you have true king of all calamity plays, because Gem Knight Master Diamond just so happens to be a level 9 monster and we got level 9 support. So Gem Knight's still really good. I think that it's a very solid deck. Lorali Kana, however she wants to say her name, topped with it, gotta give her props. My boys Noble Knights, they gotta be sleepers, they gotta be rogue. I mean, you got that Artigerous, he can make himself indestructible, he can make himself untargetable. Unfortunately, the investment is way too high. Now, I don't think that this is a terrible strategy, but unfortunately, making that Artigerous requires way too many resources to make and can easily be stopped by a kaiju. Or if we look at the other strategies like Black Wings or Blue Eyes that make those type of monsters, or even Dark Magician, they can easily just summon the monster with 1 or 2 cards. Noble Knights is a little bit different, and during the process of making that combo, it becomes pretty fragile. Next are Pendulum. I'm gonna group in Pendulum, Magician, and Damien in the same deck because Pendulum and Damien isn't really like, you just throw in Damien cards. Easily tier 1.5. I don't know why people don't play more Pendulums. It probably could be right here. The problem with Pendulum is that Electromite is at 1 and people think that the deck doesn't have a mid game. Unfortunately for them, Pendulums have a beginning game, a mid game, and an end game. The end game is their beginning game most of the time. It just seems to finish you off. Being able to make those multiple negate boards as well as play around your opponent's resources, pretty strong deck. Infernoid are a solid sleeper in the meta. The first sleeper that we have. Look, the deck is compromised of several DD Crows. Like every single Infernoid monster is a DD Crow. That's kind of dumb. The fact that it has access to Infernoid Anuku, which allows you to destroy all of your opponent's monsters and negate spells and trap cards, or Deviati, which destroys all your opponent's spells and trap cards, and on top of that acts as an effect veiler or some sorts. Not really, even better, like a Solemn Strike. The deck is stupid good. It plays kind of like Shadow. Your Void Imagination, welcome to the world of imagination, plays on your opponent's extra deck. The deck is still really powerful. The only thing that keeps Infernoids behind is consistency. Being able to get those Infernoid monsters to the graveyard. I love that Link monsters aren't levels or ranks, and so Infernoid monsters can almost summon themselves for days. Mech Knight is a solid tier 2 strategy, possibly even just a sleeper. Let's actually put it in the sleeper category because there's not a lot of Mech Knight players. And when I mean Mech Knight, I don't mean invoked Mech Knight, I mean pure. A lot of players foolishly make Mech Knights go first. The only unfortunate thing is that an experienced Mech Knight player, hi all 5 of you guys, will play Mech Knights to an advantage. Going first can really set your opponent up, almost preventing them from special summoning, actually preventing them from special summoning whatsoever, and then making some really astounding boards to give you multiple negates. Going second, that's what Mech Knights do best, just gaining advantage over your opponent's columns. A lot of times, Mech Knights play well because your opponent isn't playing by column. It just is what it is sometimes. Mech Knights are solid, and if you guys want to see a live duel, go ahead and like this video up. I might have something for you this week. Next is Kazmu. Cali, what are you doing? Unfortunately for Cosmo, it's a really powerful deck. Being able to summon Dark Destroyer, an untargetable 3000 monster, and having it in Moss would almost put it in the rogue category until you realize that Dark Destroyer is just only untargetable. It's not indestructible. And often making cards like Boral Sword Dragon or Borolo Dragon can take your Cosmo Dark Destroyer. It's not too great. The good thing about Cosmos is that if Emergency Teleport does come off the list and a little higher, Cosmo FTK or OTK would be a little more viable. Who am I kidding? It'd be a lot more viable and possibly push it to the tier 2 status. Layer of Darkness is a pretty interesting sleeper. Look, as you guys can see, there are a lot of dark archetypes in here. The reason being is because Dangers and or Cust are dark decks. Having access to that inside of Layer of Darkness, as well as the ability to tribute your opponent's monsters, some of these decks really rely on having their monsters on the side of the field, and being able to spell summon Darkness Diablos, which is a disruption and a big monster, pretty good. Madolche Tier 2, easy. Madolche has gotten only better with the new Madolche Glace Souffle, allowing you to recur your hand traps after you hand trap them. If you guys haven't seen it, check down below in the description. I do some nasty things with Madolche, make a really good first turn board, as well as the ability to break your opponent's board. The engine isn't too big, so cards like Kaijus, Infinite Impermanence, Forbidden Chalice, whatever you can throw at your opponent to disrupt them, so you can go for the 2-card OTK. Too strong. Actually, I think it's a 1-card OTK. It's one of those. It's insane what Madolches can do. Mystic Mine? Cali, what are you doing? Look, maybe my biasness, and I'm not gonna lie. While I do have evidence to back up most of these cards, some of them could be biased just a little bit. Mystic Mine Burn is trash. Definitely underwhelming. I think that if you're playing Mystic Mine Burn, you're one of those type of people. I can't say that on this type of channel. Nonetheless, to be honest with you guys, I think maybe tier 2-ish. Mystic Mine is decent. I'm not going to talk about that. Next, we are going to talk about is Necross. Necross are a solid rogue deck into this format. Necross Atrishula, allowing you to banish cards from your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard. You do that a few times, it's odds that your opponent won't be surviving that game for much longer. You have consistent hand traps in Necross of Valkyries, preventing your opponent from winning that game when they feel like they should. And then monsters like Necross of Bryonic that punish your opponent. Yes, it actually has an unfilled effect for summoning from the extra deck. I feel that Zephyra is a solid tier 2 deck, lower than the Pendulum Magician because of its openings, easier to negate, easier to manipulate, but it does have a bigger upside. Being able to rip cards out of your opponent's hand, having access to True King of all Calamities, so many other possibilities with Zephyra Pendulum, it's a really solid deck. Orcust is our first tier 1 deck, and there's no debate about it. Orcust is tier 1. Off of 1.5 cards, 1 cards a lot of times, you can make multiple negate boards. And the fact that you can play in your graveyard, heck, Orcust is the reason why some of these strategies are even on this list, sleeper and above. Prank Kids just topped a high-level event. Why am I putting him in Cali? What are you doing? I mean, to be honest, I can't necessarily put them in Rogue. They don't have anything to counteract the tier 1 decks. They're not really sleepers. While they are really powerful, I think that they're above any of these decks, barring Mystic Mind. Maybe Mystic Mind might be better or worse. But unfortunately for Prank Kids, they were severely crippled by Summon Sorceress getting banned, as well as you losing, just not having the fusion cards when you need them. This deck suffers from what Shadows used to suffer from. Either you have your fusion cards and you need your normal summon and the multiple monsters on your side of the field, or you don't have your fusion cards and you kind of fall off. The reason why Shadows are so good is, well, super polymerization and also the ability to abuse light and dark monsters. Prank Kids monsters or Prank Kids decks have to exclusively play with themselves. While the deck can top, you're probably better off just playing it unless you've been playing Prank Kids all your life. Huh? No, 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 maybe? No? What? What are we doing with Ritual Beast? Bam. Seriously. It could be Rogue too. You can put it in either one of these. I'm going to put it in the sleeper category because nobody plays Ritual Beast. People are wondering, TheCaliEffect, what are you talking about? Why is Ritual Beast? Well, if you guys seen the secret text that can help you beat meta decks, one of the cards I mentioned was Different Dimension Ground, being able to banish all cards or all monsters that would be sent to the graveyard. Now, the reason why this works so well is because not only does Trap Trick search this out, it searches out Ritual Beast Steed and your Ritual Beast Ambush. Ritual Beasts don't care about being in the graveyard. A lot of times, being in the banish zone is very beneficial for the deck. Don't sleep on this deck. Having access to Macro, DeFi, Different Dimension Ground, Trap Trick to activate any of your steeds and your ambushes at the right opportune moment, this deck can still pop off. It's one of the very few decks, if not the only deck, with 3 normal summons and can set up some insane boards. Solomon Grade is easily tier 1. Look, it's like Altergeist, but better. Like, it's literally Helmet-esque, and then it's like, it's just good. I really shouldn't have to explain this, but just talking about these fiery, fearsome monsters, just having access to OTK your opponent gives it a slight edge or a significant edge over Altergeist, as well as being able to control the board with your hand traps instead of being back row reliant. Next, Sky Striker. Let's do a checklist, ladies and gentlemen. Is multi-roll at 3. It's Widow Anchor at 3. It's Engage at 3. Doesn't matter if Kagari got limited. This deck is still one of the most powerful decks of the format. Seriously, look at the entire tier list and tell me which one of these decks can consistently beat Sky Striker. Well, the only ones that can consistently beat Sky Striker are probably in this tier 1 status. While this could be in the tier 1.5 category, Sky Strikers do have the consistency to still be able to beat these decks. And on top of that, the only thing they lost was their long mid game. They had to play extra cards to recycle the Kagari. Dinos are a solid tier 2 deck, whether you're playing Shadow Dino, whether you're playing True King Dino, Lost World Dino, this deck can definitely top some high level events. The fact that we did get some support inside of the new spell card from the Dark Neostorm set, World Legacy Monstrosity makes True King of Calamities easier. This deck actually has some saucy plays, and we're working on the True King Dino deck profile. Spyros as sleepers? No. They're Cali, what are you doing? I feel that Spyros are really good. Tier 2 type good. But here's the problem with Spyros. All that jazz and those combos you were doing with Spyros, you can do it with this deck except better. Seriously, Spyros play way more bricks, have way more problems, and aren't as powerful as Danger Thunder Dragon. It just is what it is. This deck has the power to be right here, but unfortunately with all of the hits and the brick cards that you have to play, it's down here. Now, Spyro Sleeper is nice. The deck is still really good, but unfortunately there are just more viable options, better options to play that don't run the necessities of certain cards that you have to run in here and certain cards that are limited that you can't take advantage of. Subterror is that tier 2 strategy you guys should already know. Searchable hand traps, making you xenophobic, I guess, making you xenophobic, saying there can only be one archetype on the field. Actually, that's being pretty scary to xenophobic decks. It's really powerful. Super Quans, every time I see this, like I think it hit the Quan, but Super Quans, Cali, what are you doing? I mean, we should have already seen that as right here. Maybe you guys got excited, all 3 of you Super Quantum players. I do think that this deck is really fun. It's definitely a local level topper. It's definitely a more viable deck with white layer, and it's very fun to play, but unfortunately it doesn't do anything as far as meta terms. Pure Thunder Dragon? Pfft, tier 2, ladies and gentlemen. Just having access to Thunder Dragon Colossus makes the deck a lot better. Having access to Thunder Dragon Titan makes it even, I was gonna say more better. That's not a real word. Makes it a lot better. The deck is still really good. Those dark and light monsters will mesh really well inside of a chaos version, but then you get to like tier 1.5. So just stick to pure Thunder Dragon. It's a little cheaper. Still a very solid tier 2 deck. Thunder King Ryo is definitely a solid rogue option. And now you guys are like, Thunder King Ryo. It's just anti-meta. Playing cards like Thunder King Ryo, Fossil Dino Apache Cephalo, and your Inspector Borders inside of like a Pot of Extravagance, Pot of Duality-esque build, getting you as much advantage as possible, and then taking advantage that the entire meta is almost centralized on certain concepts. Anti-meta is a very solid rogue option. Going ahead with Paleo Frog, I think it's a solid tier 2 option. Now, Paleo Frog is actually, no, we'd have to put it as a sleeper because nobody plays this deck anymore. So I think sleeper is even better. It's a solid tier 2 option because the ability to go first and set all those trap cards, Trap Trick makes this deck infinitely better. Make Totally Awesome is insane because following the next turn, you'll OTK your opponent. The problem with Totally Awesome is it struggles with going second because of all the traps that you play. If your opponent sets up a good enough board and is then able to break yours, you're in trouble. And then on top of that, all of the back row disruption that's being played currently. Trickstars are 1.5, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, climbing back into the meta, another anti-meta deck that only relies solely on Candina and Lycoris. Being able to continuously summon this monster, having a steady stream of monsters, as well as Light Stage, being able to disrupt those back row cards and search either of those cards. Trickstars, really good as an engine and as a deck type. ABC, one of my favorite decks of all time. If you guys didn't know, Fire Fist is my favorite deck, and yes, I am pumped for the new support. It's Cali, what are you doing? There are a very few number of people that can pilot ABC with success. The unfortunate thing is all of the ABC extenders are limited, such as your Sky Striker Mecha Hornet drones, your Brilliant Fusion. It feels like every toss and turn, even Summon Sorcerers, every toss and turn, this deck gets slapped in the face and has been left into futility. Possibly we get a D, Dust Yourself. Get it? Because A, Assault Core, B, Buster Drake, C, Crush Wyvern, D, Dust Yourself Off into competitive relevancy. No. But if we get D, Dust Yourself Off into competitive relevancy, possibly a monster that special summons a Union monster from your deck to your side of the field, this deck would shoot all the way up into the tier 2 status. But for right now, I gotta put it in the... Now, I know this was a pretty long video, but I really hope you guys enjoyed it, bringing you guys a full meta breakdown on the entire meta. It was fun to do. Again, let me know down below in the comment section if you guys want to see this. If you guys want to see more of this, and how do you feel? What exact tier list do you guys want to see? Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy. I hope you guys are having a great day, like I am.